Don't you love it when things are both easier and more affordable? Like when the rain washes your car for you. Or like when you save up to 10% by bundling your renters and auto insurance with USAA. Bundle with USAA and start saving. Get a quote today.
This episode is brought to you by Temptations Cat Treats. Your cat will come running for the perfectly irresistible Temptations Creamy Puree and Temptations Lickable Spoon Cat Treats. The best time to feed lickable cat treats to your cat is anytime. Feed by hand for a playful moment, in a bowl for a creamy treat, or as a topper to make mealtime fun. Visit temptationstreats.com to learn more.
This week, we are talking nappies. Now, it may not be the most glamorous of topics, but it is one that you need to know about. I'm joined by Hannah Davies, founder of Motherhood Road, newborn care specialist and sleep consultant.
I think I'm much more excited about talking about poo than I should be, and I'm not sure if that's normal.
Often linking to that kind of straining, people then think their baby's actually constipated.
I want to sort of emphasise at the very beginning that there is a huge range of normal, and it will vary from baby to baby. There's many factors that you want to take into account.
Any kind of tools and techniques and knowledge that we can take on board to make it easier is definitely a really big win.
So the most common messages I get and parents showing me are,
Hello, I'm Pip and welcome to the Midwife Pip podcast, the home of expert information and real chats on all things pregnancy, birth and beyond. This week, we are talking nappies. Now, it may not be the most glamorous of topics, but it is one that you need to know about. Nappies are an essential part of baby life, and knowing what is and is not normal can be a huge sense of relief, as there is so many variations, and they can also actually alert you to potential underlying health issues too. This week, I'm joined by Hannah Davies, founder of Motherhood Road, newborn care specialist and sleep consultant, to make sure that you have the nappy information that you need for a smoother, healthier parenting journey. So welcome, Hannah, and thank you so much, A, for being on the podcast, but B, for transparency, re-recording with me, because I had major Wi-Fi issues yesterday, but Hannah's very kindly hopped on early morning to kickstart our weekend, so thank you.
you're welcome. It's great to be on here.
And also super aware that I have literally dragged you in to talk about a topic that is all about poo. So thanks for the willingness to cover this one.
All right, I think I'm much more excited about talking about poo than I should be, and I'm not sure if that's normal, but it's a bit of a hot topic.
Isn't it so funny? Yeah, once you're in the baby world, or you have a baby, all of a sudden, all the dinner table conversation is about poo, because it actually becomes really important quite quickly, I think.
Yeah, I think that's something I've realised, and I was discussing with a friend the other day who doesn't have a baby, and she's actually pregnant, and I said to her I was coming on the podcast, and she was like, how are you going to talk about poo for 30 minutes, an hour? And I was like, oh, I can talk about it for a long time. So yeah, I just think you're oblivious before. Yeah, you might have to stop me.
Amazing. Well, in that case, I'm going to jump straight in because I've got so much that I want to talk to you about and share. So let's talk about the initial period. So that initial part where it does become hot dinner table conversation. And that's kind of what is normal in those first few weeks. And what can parents expect from kind of colours and textures and frequencies, Hannah?
Yeah, of course. So I want to sort of emphasise at the very beginning that there is a huge range of normal, and it will vary from baby to baby. There's many factors that you want to take into account, whether that's, and it's not just whether you're feeding breast milk or formula. It can be things like the mode of delivery, how baby is born, whether they take in a lot of mucus, positioning and attachment at the breast, the bottle, how we're preparing formula, antibiotic exposure. There's a huge realm of things which I will discuss further on, but moving back to like what you can expect during those first few days and weeks. So the first poo that you'll see from your baby is pretty gross. It's called meconium poo, and you might hear your midwife refer to it as mech poo. I don't know if you call it that, but a lot of people call it mech poo. And
Yeah, I do. I don't know why we have that slang for it, but we like to shorten things, don't we?
Yeah, I just think it makes things easier. But it's very so it's very dark green, but it looks almost black. And it has a consistency that's really sticky, tar-like. Some people resemble it to Marmite. Sorry if anyone's eating their breakfast. But yeah, so it's kind of, it is basically all of the fluid that your baby has swallowed whilst in utero, and it's just flushing out of their system as they begin to feed on either colostrum or formula. So that's coming out, and you expect to see that from within the first 24 hours. You want to see at least one mech poo, hopefully two. It is a bit of a warning sign if there's not one coming through. That's just a sign that maybe you haven't kick-started digestion. And then that will transition. Hopefully by day 3 to 5, you don't want to be seeing any of those poos anymore. It will then turn into more of a greeny colour, so greeny brown, and then it transitions into more of a like mustardy orange colour. And I guess that's something that lots of parents aren't aware of. Like poo, to us, poo is brown. And suddenly you see this quite watery substance that is very liquidy. In particular, breastfed babies have what some people say to me, is this diarrhea? Does my baby have diarrhea? And I'm like, no, that's just normal newborn breastfed baby poo. And then you can expect a baby that's had a bit of formula to perhaps have a slightly thicker consistency, would say more of a like squishable, spreadable consistency as opposed to a liquidy one, which sounds a bit gross, but yeah, so that's what I'd expect in the first sort of like 5 days. And in terms of how many poos, in the first 6 weeks, I would want to see minimum 2 poos a day. More is probably better, and to be expected, a breastfed baby is kind of quite often likely to poo at every feed. It can be a bit overwhelming to begin with, and you're like, you've just fed, they've just fallen asleep, and then there's another poo, and you're like, why is there another poo? I made the mistake the other week of saying to and I was doing a night with a newborn and as a night nanny, and the mum said, well, are those enough nappies for the night? And I said, oh yeah, like I'd be worried if I used that many nappies. I used that many nappies, and there were like 10 of them, and I think I made the mistake of like changing it too soon because I'd forgotten like how quickly they poo, and then I changed again because it's not my baby and I want to make sure it's freshly changed. Yeah, so if you're going to use a lot of nappies during that first week, but definitely through to like 6 weeks, you'll be changing the nappy a lot, and that's not really something I'd be concerned about. That's a good sign that everything is going well with digestion and milk intake. In terms of like green poo, I know I mentioned that briefly. I'll come back to that later on because it's quite a big topic to cover, but in the first few days you can expect to see some green poo, especially if your baby's had antibiotic exposure, or just if mum maybe has had an iron transfusion or is taking iron tablets. And again, if the baby's having some formula is really high in iron, so again that can come through as green poo. So it's not necessarily something I'd be rushing to like with alarm bells, but take a photo of your baby's nappy and show your midwife or health visitor just to chat it through. But yeah, that's what I'd expect just in the first sort of 5 days through to 6 weeks, is at least two sort of £2 coin size poos, and it can really vary with consistency. But I would also sorry no, you go.
Sorry, Hannah, I was just going to say, and I think in that first kind of 6 weeks, that's often where the mums are, breastfeeding or formula feeding or doing a mixture, is often when we're really searching for almost signs that our feeding is going well and that our baby is taking enough. And I love the fact that if we're seeing those kind of changing colours that you've mentioned, and we're having those regular bowel movements, that's a reassuring sign on its own that actually, yes, baby is taking sufficient milk and they are getting that kind of important hydration, nutrition. So just almost knowing you're normal is a great way of just reassuring yourself, which sometimes at 2 a.m. as a new mum is just what you need, isn't it? That bit of, right, actually, what's my evidence that things are going well? And looking at your nappies and what habits have kind of been going for your baby can be really valuable.
Yeah, and that's what I often say to parents when I speak to them and they're saying, how do I know if my baby's having enough milk or they're feeding well? And I say, it's all about, well, it's about temperament, but also like whether they're settled, but also about nappy output. We want to see like 6 wet nappies per day that are heavy, and whether they're pooing. And that's a big indicator that if that's going well, then it's likely that feeding's going well. I have seen in those early weeks babies with sort of spinachy green poo. That's more of a little red flag, just to get some feeding support. Could be a sign that baby has a really shallow latch. Maybe you just need to adjust your positioning and attachment. So seek support through your midwife or your health visitor, or book yourself an appointment with a breastfeeding peer supporter or IBCLC. Again, a shallow latch can be due to tension, and a lot of babies are born with tension just after delivery, a position in utero, so many factors. And if you can get yourself an appointment with an osteopath, that's something I really, really recommend, is beneficial, just so that they've got full function and motion in their jaw. They're not just taking in like high watery lactose milk. And then I'd also say, like, one thing just to briefly touch upon is whether they've got tongue tie. But I know I don't want to go into that topic too deeply because that's a whole nother podcast. But again, if they do have a tongue tie and they won't necessarily be able to get sufficient milk transfer or feed efficiently on the bottle. So again, that's something to just think about. If your baby's having like a thick, greeny, spinachy poo, then that could be a sign that milk transfer is not optimal. So just to flag that with a healthcare professional.
Yeah, it's such good advice, isn't it? And it's always about not sort of seeing something and thinking, oh my goodness, you know, this is super, super alarming. But actually, what could this just be showing me? What could this be telling me? And using all those little pieces of the jigsaw almost to then get the support that you and your baby need. Because my goodness, we know that those early weeks of parenthood, of being in that newborn bubble, are super tough. So any kind of tools and techniques and knowledge that we can take on board to make it easier is definitely a really big win. Now, you mentioned a little bit there, Hannah, the kind of difference that we might expect between a breastfed baby's nappies and a formula-fed baby's nappies. But just so that anyone listening is super clear, because I'm always conscious that as mums in particular, we're at play groups or, you know, at baby massage, and we're changing babies next to each other. And we might see another baby's poo looking quite different to ours. And we are the worst creatures at comparing ourselves, at comparing our babies. So what differences might we see, just so that if anyone does recognise that their baby's nappy looks significantly different to a friend's or, you know, another mum's baby, what should we expect? What's kind of the normal variation between breast and bottle fed, or I guess combination fed as well?
Okay, so a breastfed baby's poo is likely to be more liquidy, and occasionally it will be curdy with seeds in, and the curds are just the fat from the milk that's just not digesting. They just haven't absorbed, so it's coming out in the poo. That's totally normal. It's not something to worry about. And then if you're introducing formula or combination feeding or formula feeding full stop, they're likely to have a slightly more solid poo. The consistency, as I mentioned before, would be a bit more squishable and paste-like. It's hard to explain, but if you're combination feeding, you might find they do, the beginning of the poo is paste-like and then the rest of the poo is really watery. And that, again, is if you're combination feeding, then it's going to come out as 2 types of poo, or you might find it's mixed up together. It does really vary, and I do want to emphasize that try not to compare your baby's poo to someone else's poo, or even your second baby's poo to your first baby's poo, because there's just so many factors that go into what comes out in their nappy that I think so many parents feel so overwhelmed and slightly anxious about it, and they obsess over it. And they find themselves like studying the nappies, taking photos. I mean, I was inundated with photos of babies' nappies, nappy contents on my Instagram. I've never received so many replies to a story in all my life. But parents, like, I get it, and it does tell you a lot. But sometimes I feel like we're rushing into like analysing what's in the nappy without just like thinking, what's going on? How was that feed? What age are they at this stage? Like, have they had something different? Like, have they had their immunisations? I don't know, did that feed seem more uncomfortable? Has someone else mixed up that bottle of formula, and so maybe it's been measured out slightly differently than you would? There's just a lot of factors that go into it, and I kind of just want to emphasise that pause and observe, like, the poo, rather than like rush into like panicking.
Yeah, I feel like it's almost like a piece of the jigsaw into the wider puzzle, but we don't necessarily want to ever act, and I say this often actually about pregnancy and birth as well, is we never want to act just on one piece of the jigsaw, but it's kind of giving you those bits of information to build up that wider picture almost. So it's really good, like you say, to take note of it, but don't let your entire day be studying every single nappy, especially if you have got one of those babies that's pooing day and night after every feed, because you will get absolutely nothing else done.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I totally agree.
Now, some of the things that maybe are a little bit more of a red flag, or that may just alarm expectant parents. One of the things that I kind of wanted to discuss or raise is especially around little girls, Hannah, when they get that kind of false menstruation, especially in the kind of early days. Can you just tell expectant parents or new parents a little bit about that? Because I think that can sometimes be really alarming.
Yes, of course. Yeah, totally. I mean, no new parent expects to open a nappy and see blood. Like, if we're told that we have blood in our poo, it's a warning sign. So it's common and normal for newborn girls to have a little bit of blood in their nappy. Not a huge amount, but it is basically due to all the hormones that have gone surging through your body, their body, through the placenta, and then potentially after whilst breastfeeding. But again, that's just the hormones are overloaded in their body, and it's just their body thinking that they're going through a little menstrual cycle, and that's what the blood is. So again, just show your midwife, your health visitor, the amount of blood, but I would expect a little smear of blood is something to be expected with a newborn girl.
Amazing. I think that's really reassuring, because like you say, you see blood and it's often massive panic, isn't it? But so normal. Are there any other kind of nappy issues that you see with parents, Hannah, that you think we should kind of troubleshoot today?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so the most common messages I get and parents showing me are both green poos, frothy poos, and mucus poos. So those are like a couple of things that I wanted to touch upon. I think green poo can seem really alarming for parents because there's this huge topic of conversation around allergies, and I know as an allergy mum yourself, like, green poo is something we're told to look out for as it's a sign of an allergy, but there is a huge realm of normal when it comes to green poo. Or some green poo is normal and some green poo is a sign of an allergy. So some of the things I'd be considering with a green poo, it can just be a sign that they have had, in a breastfed baby, lots of the watery milk that's high in lactose. I don't like to refer to it as fore milk and high milk, because I know it's a whole different topic, but a baby that's perhaps taking lots of little feeds, or they've it's hot weather, so your breast milk's changed to be more watery and higher in sugar just to support them in the hot weather, then you might notice their poo changes to a slightly greener colour. Again, antibiotic exposure, so many babies are exposed to antibiotics and that can turn their poo green. It's just because the bacteria levels in their gut have been disrupted. It's gut dysbiosis, so the range of like good bacteria and bad bacteria, there's not a good balance at that time, so the poo can turn green. Again, in that circumstance, like, something I'd recommend parents is, if you're breastfeeding, take a probiotic yourself, and if you're formula feeding, get the BioGaia probiotic drops. And then when a baby has green poo and there's an allergy, you probably expect to see other symptoms alongside this. So rashes are a big one, like eczema on the body, not just like the baby acne, but uncomfortable skin, an unsettled baby. And I'd say the green poo would probably become smellier. Like, an allergy poo is pretty gross, and I don't know if you'll agree with me, but you can tell a lot by the smell. And I know lots of people will sort of think, oh my God, all poo smells. But actually, a baby's poo isn't horrendously offensive unless they're like
and actually
teething.
breastfed babies to start with, Hannah, like when they're exclusively breastfed, it just smells a bit sweet, doesn't it? It's not particularly offensive really at all.
No, just a bit yeasty and a bit buttery. Like many mums I speak to say, oh, I quite like the smell, and other mums, yeah. I mean, yeah, when I say it's not offensive, like a lot of people will be like, oh, and I've seen many dads changing a nappy and retching and gagging. I think that's a dad thing, I don't know. Oh, but then I guess with green poos, just my takeaway from that would be take photos, consider it as something that's a change, unless they always have a green poo. For example, I find babies on Kendamil have really green poos because it's really high, formula's really high in iron, the powdered formula, so their poo tends to be a bit greener. But my main takeaway from that is flag it with a healthcare professional, but pause and observe at the same time. Like, don't necessarily make any sudden changes, don't necessarily like completely cut out dairy instantly. Give it a few days, see if the poo goes back to normal. But if it continues, then you can look at making adjustments such as seeking feeding support, that's a big one, seeing an osteopath, considering tongue tie, then considering allergy, milk, or taking out dairy from your diet. But I think something I've found recently, which is pretty alarming to me, is that many mums I speak to are going to their GPs or even like paediatricians on Portland Street in London and paying a lot of money for them to be told that the problem is their breastfeeding and to stop breastfeeding and go on to allergy milk and it will resolve all the issues. And I just want to emphasise that that isn't the only way, and it's not necessarily going to give you a magic cure. So I think it's really important, as you said, to look at it as a puzzle that you need to put the pieces together, and don't try and skip the steps. So need to look at it as an overview. So waffling on about green poo, but it is a big concern of parents, and I don't want to not validate anyone's feelings when it comes to like allergies, because that's a big thing as well.
Definitely. And I think it's something we've become almost maybe too aware of, to be honest, Hannah, because so many parents I speak to, as soon as their baby has any discomfort, even within the realms of normal, are suddenly like, it must be an allergy. And then we're like taking, massive, nutrient dense foods out of our diets, out of babies' diets. And actually, then often what I tend to find is when babies have that kind of normal unsettled period, typically, that we call it that witching hour before night, where they're just a bit more fussy. If parents then decide that this must be an allergy, they cut dairy out their diet or, cow's milk proteins. And then after about a month, when their baby is an entire month older, their digestion is generally just more advanced. That fussy period tends to settle, but they've almost falsely proven in their mind that removing the cow's milk protein has improved symptoms, when actually it was going to improve anyway with that period of time. But then we're on this whole allergy trajectory which we may have never actually needed to be on. Because I think we're desperate, and I totally get that when you've got a baby and you think there's something wrong, or they're uncomfortable, or you're concerned about something like their nappies. We're desperate to search for answers, aren't we? And often it's like, oh, my friend had a baby with an allergy, so that must be this, and we cut things out and we almost jump the gun a little bit. But I totally agree in that, like, actually this is just a piece of the jigsaw. What else is going on with baby? What support might we need? But not making any drastic kind of changes to your baby's feeding, because actually that in itself can then upset them if we're kind of doing some crazy big switch in feeding. And so sometimes it is very simple, small kind of adjustments or techniques or support that actually make a really, really big difference.
Yeah, and one thing I would want to touch upon is just a lot of parents I find think that their baby is really struggling to pass gas or a poo, and in fact it's quite normal. It's called infant dysphagia. I always say it wrong, but and that is just that their muscles that they use to pass a poo or wind are not coordinated yet because they are immature, and the straining and the noisiness isn't always a problem. Babies will have a poo and make ridiculous faces. They might go bright red. They might pull their legs up and grunt. It doesn't always mean there's something wrong. And I think we're almost trying to like skip ahead of what is biologically normal and resolve that through like whether that's medication or like changing stuff. And I often find parents have changed so many things in the space of like 3 days that they have no idea what's helping and what's not. And that's when some like getting some extra support can be really useful, or just keeping like a diary or in your mind like one thing at a time, because then take each day as it comes, but also remember they are really little.
My brand new book, Midwife Pip's Guide to a Positive Birth, is now available. So much more than a book, this is a guide that allows me to hold your hand through your birth preparation journey. With over a decade of experience and knowledge packed in to ensure you really are empowered in the way you deserve to achieve a positive birth, regardless of the twists and turns that crop up. Make sure that you get your hands on Midwife Pip's Guide to a Positive Birth book now and are empowered to have the birth experience that you deserve. Yes, I love that. And you're so right, because I think often linking to that kind of straining, people then think their baby's actually constipated. And I always say, actually, when you look at a baby's poos, they might have done all of that kind of straining and made it all look a little bit hard work, because like you say, they're just navigating that pelvic floor coordination and that relaxation that has to happen. Gosh, I as a pelvic health specialist work with so many women that have had pelvic floors for years and can't coordinate relaxing them. You know, our babies are so tiny and they've got work to do to kind of learn that. But often, because they see all that straining, they then assume it's constipation. But actually, when the baby does pass a stool, it's that normal texture for their feeding journey, like you mentioned. And so that can then kind of reassure us, if you like, that actually this isn't a constipation issue. This is our baby doing that normal behaviour and learning actually what is quite a big job for them, let's be honest.
Yeah, and I think we forget about that, and actually it is a big job for them and they're doing a lot. But I think just taking into account that constipation would be quite obvious, and you'd expect a really solid poo for constipation in prior to weaning, but it would be sort of pellety, like as I said earlier, you want to be able to squish the poo. If it comes out and it stays in a very solid shape and doesn't change in the nappy, then that's probably verging on constipation. And that's just something that I'd want to emphasize, that actually a lot of people say, oh, my baby's constipated, when in fact their digestion has slowed down after 6 weeks. Some babies do not poo every day. It's better if they do, but within the realms, as I said, within the realms of norm, there are some babies that go days on end without pooing, and then they do all their poos in one day, and they're the right consistency, and there's sometimes nothing you can do about that. I think just realizing that straining, making lots of noises, and especially like those early hours when their gut gets going, that those farmyard hours are because they're getting like all of that, their guts going, and they're trying to like engage their muscles, and that will change and they will grow out of that.
Definitely. We always forget, don't we, that babies are actually just very small versions of us, and our bowel movements are all completely different. So we can't expect for them all to kind of fit one mold, I suppose. Then I just thought it might just be helpful, Hannah. I'm just gonna summarize, I guess, an idea about what, and as you've said so beautifully, we are talking about a guide here, not a prescription of poos, but kind of I'm going to just summarize very briefly the kind of normal in terms of frequency in the early kind of days. And then we'll just move on to a few of those red flags that might require sort of sooner medical attention. But just as a very brief summary, on the first day, sort of 1 or 2, we're just expecting 2+ wees a day and 1+ poo a day. As Hannah said, often babies will do much more than that. But in that first kind of 24 hours, we basically want to know that everything is functioning. Baby is able to pass both a wee and a poo. Then on day sort of 3 to 4, we're looking at 3 or more wees a day and 2 or more poos a day, at least the size of a £2 coin, like Hannah said, and that change in colour, like Hannah's mentioned as well at the beginning of today's podcast. And then handily, it kind of moves up with the number of days. So on days 5 to 6, again, looking at 5 or more wees a day and still at least 2 poos. And then from kind of a week onwards, day 7, 6 or more wees, and then again, at least 2 poos a day. But like Hannah said, that is a guide, and it's very much getting to know your baby's kind of normal and how they are around that. It's not kind of just take this one piece of information and run with it, actually exploring everything else that's going on for your baby. Hannah, I feel like we've done a lovely job of kind of describing the vast range, the huge range and spectrum of normality and variation, and unpicking a little bit around those green poos that, as you said, may well be a normal variation or may alert that actually you do just need a little bit of extra support and care. Are there any kind of red flags that you would see, or that you think if parents did see these, they should actually contact a paediatrician or a GP? We're just hitting pause for a moment while I share something brand new with you. I am excited to share a brand new tool for all parents that is the AptaClub AI Poo Tracker, an innovative tool designed to help new parents understand their baby's poo and what it might indicate about their health. By simply entering details or uploading a photo, the AI-powered tool analyses the colour, texture and consistency of your baby's poo, providing useful insights and guidance. The tool empowers parents with knowledge and reassurance, while also helping them recognise when medical advice may be needed. The Poo Tracker uses advanced technology to provide accurate and reliable information tailored to your baby's specific symptoms. The AI Poo Tracker provides reassurance and guidance by helping parents differentiate between normal and concerning poo patterns, as well as health insights through information on what different colours and textures could mean for your baby's digestion and overall health. The tool can help to identify potential issues early, allowing parents to seek medical advice when necessary. The AptaClub AI Poo Tracker is designed to support new parents by offering an easy-to-use, informative tool that enhances their confidence in caring for their baby. It acts as a first step in assessing digestive health, ensuring parents feel informed and equipped to take the best possible care of their little one. And you can check it out now at aptaclub.co.uk/baby/baby tools/poo tracker.
Yeah, so we don't want to be seeing any pale poos, like any pastel coloured poos that can go from like white, chalky colour, silvery. Those are a sign that there's something going on with like bile production and liver function. So again, that's a red flag that I would want to go straight to GP next day, or maybe consider A&E. But it's just one of those things that I wouldn't ignore. We don't want to be seeing a poo that is that colour. So in terms of blood in the poo, this is a big one, but a lot of red jelly-like poo is a big warning sign. Again, go straight to A&E. That's not, I wouldn't want to be waiting for the doctor the next day. Where that can be, so if you have a nappy that's full of jelly blood, that's a bit like strawberry jam, that's a sign of an interception, which is a blockage in the gut. So again, bad sign. However, a little speck of blood or a bit of mucus with one little speck of blood in is something I would just flag with your GP the next day and pause and observe on, and have a think in the puzzle picture whether there's something else going on, because I didn't touch upon it earlier, but mucus is normal production in your gut. We all need mucus to line the bowel and our gut, and a mucus poo isn't an immediate sign of an allergy or something terrible going on. It's just it's necessary for digestion. So again, a little speck of blood might be something like, if you're breastfeeding and you've got cracked nipples that are bleeding, that's going to come through to your baby's nappy. If they have had their vaccines or antibiotics or something else, it's causing a disruption to their gut. Perhaps there's a little bit of bleeding on the way out. So fresh blood, a tiny bit. Again, flag it with your GP, but it's not an immediate A&E situation. Yeah, sorry, I feel like I go off on a tangent talking about mucus poo because that's a big one as well. But,
no, but it's so important because I know, like, you'll be the same to me. The questions we get from parents often are green and mucus. They're the kind of things that we hear so much, so it's great to troubleshoot them. No,
of course. And I just think, touching on mucus again, some of the things to consider are that if your baby has a cold, then they can't blow their nose, and it's going to come through to their nappies. So going back to red flags, like a big red flag would be a black blood, like dark blood nappy. Like if we're seeing that, it means there's something going on higher up. Again, it could also, little speck could be just check your nipples, check there's no bleeding. But look, if there's dark blood, go straight to A&E. That's something I'd want to not ignore and get a referral for. And then constipation, like really constipated breastfed baby would be a flag for me that I'd want to look at, just because it's very rare, but there is something called Hirschsprung's disease, which just means that like the poo is stuck in the bowel. And so I would just want to consider that if you've got a breastfed baby, exclusively breastfed baby that's really constipated, probably just go and get that checked out as well. I'm trying to think if there are any other real red flags. I think in terms of diarrhea, you will know if your baby has true diarrhea that's caused by, you can get diarrhea from after their vaccines, because of course some of them's giving them that immunity. But then if you are formula feeding, just double check that you're making it up correctly, that you're using the correct temperature of water, the ratio of formula, and that you're washing your bottles really well. Occasionally it can just be that there's some contamination there, and they've got a stinky poo because they're unsettled and there's some bacteria. Teething poos, again, can cause diarrhea, disrupts the pH level in their gut, so you're going to see a poo that's pretty, I always say, if they've got a smelly poo, are they teething? Because a teething poo is pretty gross. I think the acid that they're swallowing in their saliva, they swallow a lot more saliva and their poo becomes more acidic and it's smelly. But I think you'll know if you've got a true diarrhea, upset tummy poo, just from the smell and the consistency. And then I was just trying to see if I've got any other red flags, but no, I think I've touched upon all of my main red flags. But again, you just got to trust in your mum instinct on whether something's right or wrong, and don't feel bad or embarrassed about asking like for support or what's going on. And just remember that there's a huge variety, and not every poo is going to look the same. So it might look like one colour for one poo and different the next poo.
You're so right. I love that, Hannah, in that trusting your instincts as a parent, so powerful. Something we talk a lot about on the podcast. You are your baby's expert. Like, no one knows your baby as well as you. So I know in the early days, perhaps the first couple of weeks, you kind of feel like, well, I don't know them either. And that's absolutely fine. So if you do need that extra reassurance, that's totally appropriate. No one's ever going to kind of think that you're, wasting anyone's time or any kind of inconvenience. It's absolutely fine if you need that extra reassurance. And then over time, as you do build up that knowledge about your baby and their norm, hold on to that, because it is really powerful. And often we do actually know more about our babies than we often realise, because you are spending 24 hours a day with them. So you very quickly do get to know their kind of norms and their likes and their dislikes. And part of that is very much getting to know what normal bowel habits are for them, and therefore kind of any deviations from it. Hannah, if you could give 3 top tips all about baby poo, that's a sentence that you perhaps weren't anticipating in your career choice, but maybe should have. 3 top tips, about baby poo that you would like to share with new or expectant parents.
Oh gosh, wasn't expecting that question, but
It can be a summary. It can be a summary of some of the brilliant tips you've already given.
Okay, so just one tip with meconium poo: put something on their bottom as a barrier just in those early days. Helps wipe it off because it is really sticky. But I think there's just remember there's a huge realm of normal, and to not jump, as you said, jump the gun and think that you need to go and change something drastically. If there's something going on in the nappy that you're not sure about and you think, oh, that's a bit different than yesterday, just try and think through what happened yesterday, what you were doing differently, and just wait and see if it goes back to how it was, and just look at like the bigger picture. So lots of mums, for example, I've known babies have a green poo because mum was collecting the milk in a milk collection in a silicone pump, and that was high in lactose, so the baby had a green poo because they'd fed it to baby. And I think it's just really important to get a second opinion, wait, not jump into certain decisions, and always trust your instinct if you think something's not right. But yeah, there is a huge range of poo and what is normal and what's not normal.
I love that. And I think trusting your instincts is such a powerful way to kind of complete this episode. So Hannah, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us all about poo.
You're so welcome. One thing I was going to touch upon is I created a handy guide, a free guide that people can download. It's going to be called the Baby Poo Guide, and I have summarised everything that I've talked about in this episode, along with loads of pictures, just to help parents. And I don't mind being sent DMs of baby poo and just to talk through, because I feel like sometimes you are really overwhelmed and you're wondering what you can do, and I don't mind receiving them. People still feel weird sending them to me, but I don't mind. But no, thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Thanks, Hannah. If you have listened to this birth story, enjoyed it, and feel that you are ready to really embrace and dedicate yourself to having the most informed, supported, and empowered journey, and want to see if we may be able to support you in YPJ, your pregnancy and postnatal journey, please drop me a Instagram DM at midwife_pip, or get in touch on my email, pip@midwifepip.com, and let's chat through things and see if we might be a good match for each other. I hope you've enjoyed listening, and wishing you all the best on your journey through pregnancy, birth, and beyond.
Unexplored catacombs buried beneath the city. A crumbling castle perched on a mountain peak. A top-secret government bunker. A cursed mansion cloaked in legend. I'm Sasha Auerbach. Join me and Tom Ward every Wednesday and Sunday as we reveal the mysteries and histories of abandoned places around the world and ask, where did everyone go? Brought to you by Like a Shot, makers of Forbidden History. Search for Where Did Everyone Go on your favorite podcast platform.